Hi everybody, my name is Elisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will continue our holiday season sewing pattern extravaganza that I've started here on my channel a couple of weeks ago, where I will be releasing a new sewing pattern every Sunday in the run-up to Christmas. Today we are on sewing pattern number 3, and I'm actually extremely excited about this one because I do really believe that this one embodies my personal design aesthetic very well. We are going to be making the Lola dress. The Lola dress features a square neckline, slightly puffy fitted long sleeves that have a bell shape in the cuff, a paneled fitted bodice that is actually chef's kiss, as well as a paneled fit and flare skirt that achieves this beautiful tulip-like silhouette with godets in the princess seams. I am actually really proud of this design because I think that it is just so feminine and beautiful, refined, classy, but also sexy at the same time. I think it potentially fits a lot of different body types, and it is extremely versatile depending on what fabric you choose. You could also easily hack this pattern into an occasion wear dress by maybe removing the sleeves, adding some straps, or going strapless, maybe extending the skirt a little bit, and you actually have a really good base for, I don't know, maybe even a wedding dress. I will be working with a beautiful Eco Vero satin today from Fabric Godmother. I think that this pattern could potentially be made in almost any fabric. It definitely thrives in flowy fabrics, something like satin, viscose, rayon, silk. But at the same time, if you go for something a little bit more weighty and stiffer, like say Duchess satin, you could come up with a completely different look that would still work really well. Taffeta, I don't know, you name it. Let me tell you a little bit more about how to print your Thrills and Stitches pattern at home. Each pattern is available in 3 printable PDF formats, DIN A4, A0, as well as US letter, with A4 and US letter being the print at home options. If you choose to print your pattern at home, pick your format and have a look at the explainer page that you'll find on the first page of the PDF document. Make sure to set your print to scale to 100% and print the first page. If the scaling box that you see there is in fact 2 by 2 centimeters, you can go ahead and print the rest of your pages. Each sewing pattern document features a set of numbers in the corners of every page, with each number existing up to 4 times. Place the same numbers next to each other in a square grid to assemble the pattern. The large gray numbers are the page numbers, which help you orient yourself if you want to selectively print elements of your pattern. I will usually leave a legend of which pattern pieces are on which pages on your explainer page. Now print all the pages of your sewing pattern and you're good to start your mock-up, because we always make mock-ups around here. Before we jump into the tutorial, let me tell you a little bit more about my friends at Ana Luisa. They've been sending me beautiful jewelry throughout all of this year, and if you followed me for a while, you actually do know that. You might actually recognize the earrings that I'm wearing right now because this design is the first ever design that Ana Luisa sent to me, and I loved it so much that I needed it in a bigger size. I have the small Paris earrings, these are the bigger ones. I think they're just so nice and chunky and crunchy, and I actually do know for a fact that my grandma used to have earrings like this, which actually makes me feel very wholesome. And it's a great supporting piece for any like casual outfit like I'm wearing today with my sweater and some denims, and it just makes you look put together and pretty nice and fresh. As the holiday season arrives, I obviously have started to think about what to give to my loved ones, and I know for a fact that Ana Luisa jewelry is going to be on the very top of Santa's list. I picked up a few earrings this time because I think earrings are a very easy thing to gift as long as you know that your friends and family wear earrings. So let me show you which ones I chose. The first ones that I got are the Ashley doubles because I think they're such an eye catcher. They also double up as little hoop earrings if you remove the ropey bit, which is just nice because it's a double whammy. Who wouldn't love 2 earrings in one? I also got the sage earrings, which basically follow the same principle. There are also these little hanging droplets off the hoops, but in a much more delicate and slightly like organic way because they have this organic shape, which I think is so pretty. I actually want to keep them. Ana Luisa has some amazing promotion deals going on right now, and I will put some of the details for you in the description box. I would really encourage you to think about getting your loved ones Ana Luisa for Christmas this year. I truly love their carbon neutral and sustainable jewelry. I would not just say that, I actually mean it. And with that being said, of course, I will don my Ana Luisa jewelry for the rest of this video. Let's get into the tutorial. Okay, let's start sewing. We have 1, 2, 4 bodice pieces here. We have the center front on a fold, then we have the side pieces of the front bodice, side pieces of the back bodice, and the center back bodice pieces, which are gonna have a zipper in the back. So what I'm doing now is I'm gonna pin together all of my seams. And the smart thing about this pattern is that we do have our darts hidden in the princess seams, which is gonna give us a really, really nice shape and curve, especially around the bust section. I am obsessed with this fabric. This is not the first time I'm working with this. This is from Fabric Godmother. I'm gonna put the link in the description box, and it's one of their original designs, which I believe they've taken from vintage fabrics. So the motifs, the flowers, they've taken from vintage fabrics and digitized them and printed them on new fabrics. It has a nice body and it has a nice structure to it, so you can see it's not like super drapey, which I like specifically for this pattern. Alright, the bodice is now assembled. We have all the panels sewn together, and now I'm going to give all of this a really good press, and I'm going to make sure to press my seams open like this. Especially around the bust curves, you want to pay a little extra attention and kind of lift the bust like this while you go through the seam, and then turn the piece around and go from the other side. That's just so that you kind of like enhance this natural curve that the pattern provides. So you can see now that there is a nice little bust emerging. Okay, now that the bodice is sewn together, we can move on to the skirt. I'm gonna start with my front panels, starting with the front skirt 1 front panel, which is placed on a fold along the center front. So I'm just removing the paper pattern and I open this piece up. So you can now nicely see the godet in the skirt emerging. A godet is basically a triangular shape that is put into seams between skirt panels to make it have this fit and flare motion once you've sewn everything together. So our skirt is going to have a much more volume in the hem section than in the waist section, where it's going to be very fitted, and that's going to give us this beautiful flowing, very feminine motion when we walk. We have the first panel here with our godet in the hem section, and then we have our second front skirt panel. It's called front skirt 2. It nicely has the side seam labeled here, and there's also a notch in the pattern, and I would recommend you place the notch here just so you know what side is the side seam and you don't get confused. So what we're going to do is we separate the two, and we're going to place the princess seams right sides touching. So the seams that are not the side seams, we're going to place right sides touching with our center front panel and pin everything in place. And I would recommend starting at the waist and then going down to where the godet starts. There's also a notch in the pattern that you could place in your fabric. I haven't done that this time, but that helps you align everything nicely. So place a needle in the waist, place a needle around where the godet starts, and then go all the way down to your hem. And because this section of the seam is off grain, you will see that sometimes it might extend a little bit because we're like migrating towards the bias where normally fabric stretches more. So my hem down here doesn't 100% match up. What's important is that this upper section of your skirt matches up. Down here you can then later trim things back if they don't fit. So focus on the upper sections and leave the hem for a little later. Just do make sure that nothing is too taut or too loose in your seam, and everything is nice and flat when you pin it. Right, so once I have pinned together the princess seams of my skirt, aka pinned the panels together, I'm gonna go and sew those sections. Moving on to the back skirt, same principle applies. We do have panels and we have a center back seam. So what I like to do is to immediately pin the center back seam, just because it's convenient. We also have a dart in the two back skirt 2 panels, which is nicely marked. So I will first sew those in. What I like to do instead of stitching back at the end of my dart is to just tie up the loose ends, because that helps to make it really nice and clean on the outside, and it kind of prevents this dreaded tip that you sometimes find at the end of darts. What I'm going to do next is to sew together the center back. For the first about 30 centimeters, there's a notch point in your pattern for the zipper end. I'm only going to baste the center back because I'm going to reopen that in a little bit. And from that notch point onwards, I'm going to change my stitch length to 3.5 and then sew the rest of the skirt in the center back shut. Okay, once the center back panels look like this, we can grab our back skirt 1 panels, and again we do have a side seam notch, which do make sure that you mark that just so you can more easily identify what your side seam is. That's just helpful. And now same procedure as with the front skirt, we need to sew the panels together. So I'm placing the previously sewn panels right side up, and then I place the side panels down, right side facing down, and I start to pin these princess seams. So we now have our back skirt assembled and we have our front skirt assembled. So let's place them right sides touching and join them at the sides. Here we go, the skirt is sewn together, and now we can join the top and the bottom. Okay, so to join the top with the skirt, we have our waist seam of the skirt right sides facing, and I can see that I missed to add a notch in the center front of my skirt, so I'm just doing that real quick. So we do have a notch point in the center front of the skirt, and we have a notch point in the waist of our top. So to join the two, we start here, place a pin, and from here we just start to align all of our seams, and they all should match up perfectly if you chose to go for the same size for the top as well as for the skirt. If you've graded between sizes, you might find that this is harder for you to do, so you might have to jiggle around a little bit, but if you stayed consistent across sizes for your top and your skirt, this should be easy for you. And as you can see, I've chosen not to serge the seam allowances of my seams on the inside, and that is because I'm going to line the top of the dress, so I can leave them raw for now and just join the top with the skirt for starters. Okay, once the waist seam is pinned together, you can go and sew it. Once you've joined your bodice with your skirt, now is a good time to try everything on. If you're happy with your fit, you can move on to the sleeves. The last thing I'm gonna do today is to prep my sleeves for tomorrow morning. And the way to do this is to first of all grab one of your 2 layers of your sleeve and realize that there is a front and a back. So the smaller armhole section right here is your front, and the longer armhole section back here is your back. To assemble the sleeve, you simply fold right sides touching, back to front or front to back, and then you pin your sleeve inseam, which is basically from the armpit down to the cuff. Now you can sew your sleeve inseam. Once the inseam is sewn, I go ahead and serge this part, as well as my shoulder curve and my cuff. So when you turn this around now, you will have a sleeve emerge, but we're not quite done yet. I'm now gonna take this to my iron fold the shoulder curve over by about 1 centimeter and press it down before I then sew the tunnel where my elastic goes in for my shoulder. And the same thing applies to the cuff. I'm simply folding it over by 1 centimeter towards the inside, of course, press it down, sew around it to create this tunnel for the elastic, and I'm going to leave a small section open so I can actually insert the elastic. So now that the tunnel in the shoulder is created, I'm grabbing this 1 centimeter elastic here, and I basically just fitted this around my shoulder from neckline to neckline, so from the front neckline to the back neckline over my shoulder blade. And that is so that I can approximately gauge how long I need the elastic to be in an unstretched state. You want it to be a little bit taut, just so it obviously holds the sleeve up on your shoulder. But the final fitting is going to happen once we attach the sleeve to our dress. And I'm simply inserting the elastic with a safety pin. Good old sewing 101. I just go into one end of the tunnel and I feed it through like this. Now you can see how the shoulder of your sleeve is nicely ruffled and looks super clean and neat. And we do the same thing with the cuff. So you want to cut your elastic so it's relatively fitted but still comfortable, because gathering up the fabric is going to create a little bit more bulk, and you don't want it to cut your, what is that? Cuff? Wrist. A wrist. You don't want it to cut your wrist. So same procedure. I simply feed the elastic into the tunnel that I made with my safety pin. Once I'm out the other side, I just go pull my two ends, make sure they're facing the same way and they're not twisted. Place a pin, and now I'm gonna sew it up on my machine. And the last thing to do is to just let the elastic disappear in this tunnel. Place a securing pin here and then close the tunnel. Alright, it is the next day and we're going to finish the Lola dress today. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to attach the sleeves to the rest of the dress. The first step to pulling it all together is to baste the sleeves onto the dress and try the dress. The way to do this is to have a look at your sleeves and find which side is the back side and which side is the front side. The back side is longer than the front side. When you have that, place the according sleeve onto your according side seam, and you're going to start by placing the inseam of the sleeve onto the side seam of your bodice, and then you place the armhole of the sleeve along your neckline towards the front, as well as the back side of your armhole on your sleeve along the back neckline. Same thing applies on the other side. Front side of the armhole goes along the front of the neckline, and the back side of the armhole goes along the back of the neckline. And what we're going to do is we're just going to baste the sleeve along the neckline for now, so we're able to try the dress. But we're going to leave the front side of our elastic tunnel here open so that we can pull the elastic and adjust it around our shoulders to give it a perfect fit. So that means when you start sewing, you start after the opening of your tunnel here, but in the back you can sew over the elastic to sew it in place and make sure it's not coming out. You can now see that the sleeves are pinned to the dress, and now I'm going to give this a basting stitch, meaning I set my stitch length to the biggest that is available on my machine. For me that is 5, and like I said, I'm going to start after the tunnel opening in the front to leave that open, and then I'm going to sew along. Time to try the dress. We are now in the fitting process, and because we left the tunnels here open, we can now adjust the elastics. So I've already adjusted it on this side and gave it a little bit more tension, so that is that the shoulder doesn't fall down like it does on this side. So what I'm doing is I'm simply going in here where I can grab the end of my elastic, I remove the securing pin, and then I pull and readjust a little bit. And once I feel like it sits, and it's not coming down, I can pin the securing pin once again, and now we know it's good to go. Right, so now once that is done and you have adjusted your elastics, you can sew them in place to keep them from jumping into your sleeve, and then you have to redo the whole process. You don't want that, so do secure it. And what I've done real quick is I have reproduced my bodice in a lining material. Basically, the thing that you do is just cut all of your bodice pieces from lining and assemble them the exact same way as I showed you with the shell, and you should end up with something looking like this. I'm going to line the top of my dress today, but not the skirt, and that is because my Ecovero satin is actually quite weighty and it has a good body and it's quite thick, so I don't think I need lining for the skirt, but I do want to have a super crisp neckline. So I'm going to show you now how to join the lining and the dress together. Okay, so to join lining and shell, you just need to place the bodice / the neckline in front of you like this, so you have good access and have the right side facing up. You then grab your assembled lining and have it right sides facing down so that the two right sides of the lining and the shell are facing. You have a notch here in your center front point, ideally, so you can start pinning here. And because we do have so many seams, obviously you want to make sure that the seams match up if at all possible. If you did a really good job, then that is possible, but if it's not entirely flush top on top, that is okay too, but they should be roughly on top of each other, all of the seams. If you do have a little bit of ease like I do here, you might be able to adjust it by just placing a few more pins, and then you should be good. So with the sleeve sections here, this is the magic of this pattern. You're now going to hide away this rawness in the underarm area, and you simply place the lining like you normally would, and this is eventually going to hide all the raw edges of your sleeve placement as well. So now that you have pinned the neckline, you can take this to your machine and you can sew this down. And you might want to do it from the side of your shell, so you can be sure that you're sewing below the stitches where you attached your sleeves, just so that those are hidden. Right, so now ideally when you turn everything around, this is what things look like. The sleeve is nicely tucked away. Check that you don't have any unwanted pleats anywhere, which I think I'm in the clear. And now we have an almost fully lined bodice. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna understitch my seam allowance. So the way to do this is to sew on the side of your lining into the seam allowance about 1/2 centimeter away from your edge. Now that it is understitched, I'm gonna go and press it. Okay, now the bodice looks like this. We are going to attach our waist to the waist of the skirt. This is a defining moment because it brings in the final stretch of our project here. And this is, I would say, an optional step. You don't necessarily have to do this. You could also just serge the end of your lining and then tuck it in place in a few points. But I want to overturn this. So the way to do this is obviously the facing would then have to look like this, and the skirt would also have to look like this for a super clean finish. I'm going to show you how to do this, and this also allows me to fix this little mistake here that I made where this seam allowance is facing the wrong direction. Funny, I know. Just gonna face it this way. Right, so the way to do this is to start at one end and turn your facing and your seam allowance together like this, so you create this little lip here. You then can go in from the side and start to pin the two together. This is a bit of a tedious task, and like I say, optional. You could also do it another way, but because I don't fully line my dress, the rules are a little different this time. And like always, it's important to make sure that all of your seams match up the right way. And because your center back is still open, this sort of allows you to go in quite far into your dress. You might even be able to go all the way. So you just pull the waist seam out through your center back and follow where it takes you. So indeed, we can go all the way. So now I'm simply sewing all of this to overturn the seam allowance with the lining. Okay, and now we just pop everything back, and like magic, we now have a beautifully lined bodice, and we need to press it. Okay, up next we're gonna insert our invisible zipper. For that, you want to have good access to your center back like this. Because our skirt is not lined, we're just gonna put the zipper in without hiding it in between lining and shell or any such a thing. So we're gonna have the zipper tape showing this time. Okay, we're gonna place the right side of the zipper down onto the right side of our shell, and we're gonna start pinning it in. Once the first side is pinned down like this, I'm gonna go and baste it in with a stitch length of 5, and I'm gonna open the zip and open it all the way down so the zipper head is out of the way. So now that the first side is basted in, I'm gonna close my zipper once again. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some tailor's chalk and transfer to the other side of my zipper band where exactly my waist seam sits on the zipper here. And that is so that I can align this point exactly with the waist seam on the other side of my center back, because that's one of the points that definitely needs to match up. I now reopen this and place this facing down once again onto the other side. And I'm going to place this chalk point exactly where my waist seam is, hopefully. And then I can align the rest of the zipper with the center back like so. Obviously, you do want to honor the seam allowance that you gave. So it depends on how much seam allowance you gave in the back, whether it's 1, 1.5, or 2 centimeters. That's exactly the line that your teeth, your zipper teeth, need to match up with. Okay, once that is pinned in, you can go and baste that second side. Now we can close the zipper and see what the alignment is like. The alignment in the waist is almost perfect. Up here, it is also almost perfect. So I think we're good. Once you are happy with the placement of your zipper, you can now go in a second time. And what you do is you either use a zipper foot to sew as closely to your zipper as possible, or if like me you don't have a zipper foot, you just uncurl the teeth of your invisible zipper and stitch down this stitch. And now to finish this off, I'm just cutting away any fraying threads, and then I fold the end of my zipper band in and under like this. And now I sew this down by hand. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to add a little hook and eye situation to really secure the back opening. All right, we are almost done with the dress. The zipper is completed, the sleeves are completed, the neckline is completed, the lining is completed. The last thing to do is the hem. You have a couple of options for the hem naturally. You could go ahead and do a rolling hem, which is what I would normally do, but because my Eco Vero satin is printed from the outside, it's white on the inside, I decided to serge my length today and then just fold it over by 1 centimeter and top stitch that. And with that, the dress is completed. Let me show you what it looks like.